Imagine this. You're jolted awake at 6 a.m. by the sound of a chainsaw, and you look out your window to see your neighbor destroying the one thing that holds your most precious memories. That tree wasn't just wood and leaves to me. It was my late grandmother's legacy, the place where I scattered her ashes, and the only thing that made me feel close to her again. I'm telling you, nothing prepares you for that moment when you realize someone is attacking something sacred to you. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. The sound of that chainsaw cutting through my beautiful oak tree was like someone taking a knife to my soul. This wasn't just any tree, honey. This was where I went to talk to my grandmother. This was where I felt her presence every single day. I planted that tree 5 years ago when Grandma passed. I mixed her ashes right into the soil around those roots. Every morning, I'd sit under those branches with my coffee and tell her about my day. That tree had grown strong and beautiful, just like she always wanted me to be. And now, some crazy neighbor was cutting it down like it was nothing more than a weed. But here's the thing about nightmare neighbors that nobody warns you about. They always think they can get away with it until someone like me decides to fight back. You need to know who I was dealing with because this neighbor had been testing me for months. And what they did that morning was just the beginning of their biggest mistake. Let me tell you about Karen. Yes, that's really her name. And yes, she lives up to every single stereotype you can imagine. Karen moved in 6 months ago, and from day one, she acted like she owned the entire block. Picture a woman in her 50s with short blonde hair, always wearing yoga pants, and carrying herself like she's the queen of the neighborhood. This woman had complaints about everything. The mailman was too loud. The garbage truck came too early. Kids playing in their own yards were too noisy. She even complained about the birds chirping in the morning. Can you believe that? Birds doing what birds do. And she wanted something done about it. But Karen didn't just complain to the people involved. Oh no. She went straight to the homeowners association, the city, anyone who would listen. She had everyone's phone number and wasn't afraid to use them. The other neighbors started avoiding her because they were tired of her constant drama. I tried to be nice at first. When she introduced herself, I brought over cookies and tried to welcome her to the neighborhood. But she just looked at those cookies like I was trying to poison her and started asking questions about property lines and noise ordinances. Red flags everywhere. But I thought maybe she'd settle down once she got comfortable. Boy, was I wrong. But the problems really started when she decided my beautiful memorial tree was somehow bothering her, and what she complained about will make your blood boil. Are you ready for this? Karen's complaint about my grandmother's memorial tree was that it was too happy looking for the neighborhood. I'm not even kidding. She said my oak tree made her property look less sophisticated because it attracted too many birds and squirrels. Then she started getting technical. She measured the branches hanging over the property line. We're talking about maybe 6 inches of branches, honey. 6 inches. She complained that leaves from my tree were falling in her yard in autumn. Imagine that, leaves falling from trees. She wanted me to somehow stop nature from happening. But wait, it gets worse. She said the tree blocked her view of the sunset from her kitchen window. Never mind that she knew the tree was there when she bought the house. Never mind that trees have been growing for millions of years before any of us were here. Suddenly, my 5-year-old oak tree was ruining her entire life experience. I tried so hard to be reasonable. I offered to trim any branches that crossed the property line. I even offered to rake up leaves that blew into her yard during fall cleanup. I was bending over backwards to keep peace in the neighborhood, even though other neighbors were rolling their eyes at her ridiculous demands. But when I refused to cut down my grandmother's memorial tree, that's when she showed me just how far she was willing to go, and I should have seen the warning signs. Looking back now, I can see all the red flags I should have paid attention to. After I told Karen the tree wasn't going anywhere, she started getting really sneaky and mean. First came the passive-aggressive notes left on my car windshield. Little typed-up messages about property values and neighborhood standards. Then, she started calling the city every single week. Code enforcement, the tree department, anyone she could find. She was trying to find some rule, some law, anything that would force me to remove my tree. I started getting visits from city workers who had to come check out her complaints, even though they could see there was nothing wrong. Karen even went to the library and researched property law. I saw her there one day with a stack of books about property rights and boundary disputes. She was taking notes like she was studying for a law degree. That should have told me she was planning something big. The scariest part was when she started taking pictures. I'd see her in her yard with her phone, taking photos of my tree from every angle. She was building some kind of case against me, and I could feel it. My other neighbors started warning me that she was asking them questions about the tree and trying to get them to complain too. The night before they cut down my tree, she made one final demand that was so outrageous. I knew she was planning something drastic. That Sunday evening, Karen came marching over to my front door like she was some kind of sheriff delivering an eviction notice. She had a piece of paper in her hands, and this look on her face like she thought she had already won some kind of battle. "I've done my research," she said, waving that paper around. "Your tree is a nuisance, and I'm giving you 24 hours to remove it completely, or I'll handle this situation myself." Handle it herself? What did that even mean? I looked at her paper, and it was just a bunch of stuff she had printed from the internet about property rights. Nothing official, nothing that actually applied to our situation. Just random articles she thought made her sound important and legal. "Karen," I said, trying to stay calm, "this is my grandmother's memorial tree. It's not hurting anyone, and I'm not removing it." That's when her face got all red and twisted up like she was about to explode. "Don't say I didn't warn you," she hissed at me. "Some people have to learn the hard way that actions have consequences." Then she stomped back to her house, slamming her door so hard I'm surprised it didn't fall off the hinges. I called my sister that night and told her about the weird conversation. We both agreed Karen was just bluffing, trying to scare me into giving in. I thought I had made it crystal clear that Tree was staying put, but I had no idea she was already planning to take matters into her own hands while I slept. That Monday morning at 6 a.m. sharp, I woke up to the most horrible sound I'd ever heard. It was like someone was murdering a robot right outside my bedroom window. I sat up in bed, trying to figure out what was happening, when I realized it was a chainsaw. My first thought was that maybe a tree had fallen in the storm we'd had over the weekend. But we hadn't had a storm. And as my brain started working, I realized that sound was coming from way too close to my house. I jumped out of bed and ran to my front window, and what I saw made my blood turn to ice. There was Karen, dressed in work clothes I'd never seen her wear before, standing next to MY Tree with a big orange chainsaw in her hands. She had already cut off several of the lower branches, and sawdust was flying everywhere. I stood there for about 10 seconds, just trying to make sense of what I was seeing. This woman was actually cutting down my grandmother's memorial tree. She was destroying the most important thing in my yard, the place where I felt closest to the woman who raised me. The rage that filled my body was like nothing I'd ever experienced. I wanted to run outside in my pajamas and tackle her right there in the grass. I wanted to scream and yell and make her stop destroying my memories. When I looked outside and saw what they were doing to my grandmother's tree, what I witnessed was even worse than I could have imagined. It wasn't just that Karen was cutting down my tree. It was the way she was doing it. She looked happy. She was actually smiling while she destroyed something she knew meant everything to me. Every few minutes, she would step back and admire her work like she was creating some kind of masterpiece. And the mess. She wasn't being careful about where the branches fell. Pieces of my beautiful oak tree were scattered all over both of our yards. Some of the branches had crushed my flower bed, the one I'd planted right around the tree's base. 5 years of growth and memories were being turned into a pile of wood chips. But the worst part was watching the main trunk start to lean. That's when I realized she wasn't just trimming branches. She was taking down the entire tree. The tree that held my grandmother's ashes. The The tree that had grown strong and tall as my own symbol of healing after losing the most important person in my life. I could see where I had scattered Grandma's ashes around those roots. Karen was destroying not just a tree, but a grave, a memorial, a sacred place, and she didn't care. She was treating it like it was just some annoying weed that needed to be removed from her perfect world. In that moment, I had a choice. I could either run outside in my pajamas and make a scene, or I could do something much smarter that they would never see coming. Thank God for all those true crime shows I watch, because they taught me the most important lesson. Always get evidence first. Instead of running outside and screaming like Karen probably expected me to do, I grabbed my phone and started recording everything. I filmed her cutting down my tree. I filmed the damage to my flower bed. I filmed her trespassing on my property to reach some of the branches. I made sure to get clear shots of her face so no one could say it wasn't really her. I even got the timestamp on my phone screen so everyone could see this was happening at 6 a.m. My hands are shaking with anger, but I forced myself to stay calm and think like a detective. Every few seconds, I would take photos along with the video. I wanted to make sure I had evidence from every possible angle. Karen was so focused on her destruction project that she didn't even notice me filming from my window. She was in her own little world, probably thinking she was so clever for getting up early to do this while she thought I was asleep. I filmed her for a full 10 minutes, getting shots of everything she was doing wrong. The trespassing, the property damage, the destruction of my memorial. I had it all documented in perfect detail. What I captured on that video became the smoking gun that changed everything. But I also documented something she didn't realize I could see from my window. Here's what Karen didn't know about my house. My bedroom window has a perfect view of both our yards and the street. So when she thought no one was watching, I caught her doing things that made her situation so much worse. First, I filmed her throwing branches and debris into MY yard instead of keeping it on her own property. That's illegal dumping, and she was doing it while I watched. Then I caught her stepping all over my flower bed, crushing plants that had nothing to do with the tree dispute. But the best evidence was when she took a break from cutting and walked around the tree, kicking at the ground where I had scattered my grandmother's ashes. She was literally stomping on a memorial site, and she knew exactly what she was doing. You could see it on her face. She wasn't just removing a tree. She was trying to hurt me as much as possible. I also got her on video talking to herself, and some of the things she said were absolutely shocking. She was calling me names and making threats about what she would do if I tried to stop her. She had no idea her words were being recorded. The whole time I was filming, I felt this weird calm come over me. I knew I had her. Every single thing she was doing was making my case stronger and her situation worse. With all this evidence in hand, I knew I had them, but my next move was going to send a message they'd never forget. And it started with one phone call that changed everything. The first number I dialed was 911. I know some people might think that's extreme, but someone was destroying my property and trespassing in my yard at 6 a.m. That's exactly what emergency services are for. 911, what's your emergency? My neighbor is cutting down my tree with a chainsaw and trespassing on my property. I have video evidence of everything she's doing. You know what the difference was between Karen's previous complaints and my call. Evidence. Real, actual proof of wrongdoing, not just opinions and hurt feelings. The operator took me seriously immediately. Ma'am, we're sending an officer to your location right now. Please stay inside and keep filming if it's safe to do so. Hearing those words was like music to my ears. After months of Karen trying to use official channels to bully me, I was finally the one with a real complaint and real evidence to back it up. The operator stayed on the phone with me while I continued filming. I described everything Karen was doing, and she confirmed that yes, this was destruction of property, and yes, this was trespassing, and yes, I had every right to press charges. The response I got from that first call was music to my ears, but when I made my second call, that's when I really started getting excited about what was going to happen next. My second call was to my cousin Jake, who happens to be a lawyer. I know. Everyone says they have a lawyer in the family, but I really do, and Jake specializes in property disputes. Lucky me, right? Jake, I need legal advice right now. My crazy neighbor is cutting down my memorial tree, and I'm filming the whole thing. Jake told me to send him the video immediately while it was still happening. He watched it in real time while Karen was still out there with her chainsaw, making her situation worse by the minute. Cousin, this woman just handed you a slam dunk case, Jake said. She's committing multiple crimes on camera: trespassing, destruction of property, illegal dumping. And since it's a memorial tree, there might even be additional penalties for disturbing a burial site. He explained that because I had scattered my grandmother's ashes around the tree, it was legally considered a memorial site in our state. Karen wasn't just destroying a tree, she was desecrating a grave. That carried much more serious consequences than just a property dispute. Jake also told me to document the dollar value of everything she was destroying: the tree, the damaged flower bed, any other property damage. He said with video evidence this clear, she would definitely have to pay for everything she was destroying, plus additional damages for the emotional distress. When I found out exactly how many laws they had broken in those few minutes with their chainsaw, I realized this neighbor had just handed me the perfect ammunition, but I was just getting started. By the time I finished my phone calls, Karen had been at it for almost an hour. The police were on their way, my lawyer cousin was building a case, and I had enough video evidence to convict her 10 times over. Now it was time to go outside and face her. I got dressed quickly and walked out my front door with my phone still recording. Karen was taking a break from cutting, wiping sweat from her forehead and admiring the destruction she had caused. Most of my beautiful oak tree was now lying in pieces across both our yards. When she saw me coming, she got this smug look on her face, like she expected me to cry or beg her to stop. She had no idea what was about to hit her. "Good morning, Karen," I said in the calmest voice I could manage. "I see you decided to handle the situation yourself, just like you promised." "That tree was a nuisance," she said, pointing at the destruction with her chainsaw still in her hand. "You should have removed it when I gave you the chance. So, you admit that you cut down my tree without my permission?" "I sure did, and I'd do it again." I held up my phone so she could see I was recording. "Good, because I want to make sure I get everything on camera for the police." When I walked up to them with my phone in hand and told them exactly what they had done wrong, their reaction was absolutely priceless and completely revealed their true character. The moment Karen realized I was recording her confession, her whole attitude changed, but not in the way you might expect. Instead of getting scared or apologetic, she got even meaner and more arrogant. "You can record all you want," she sneered. "That tree was hanging over my property, and I had every right to cut it down. Besides, who's going to care about your little sentimental ash pile?" Did you hear that? She called my grandmother's memorial an ash pile. This woman had just admitted on camera that she knew exactly what that tree meant to me, and she destroyed it anyway. She wasn't just admitting to property destruction. She was admitting to cruel, intentional harm. "Karen, you just confessed to destroying my memorial tree, trespassing on my property, and dumping debris in my yard. And now you're telling me you knew it was a memorial site when you did it. So what? Are you going to call your mommy? Oh wait, she's dead too, isn't she?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This woman was so full of hate and meanness that she was making fun of my dead grandmother while standing in the ruins of her memorial tree. But every cruel word was being recorded, and every cruel word was going to help my case. What they said next was so outrageous, it actually helped my case even more, and I made sure to get every word of it on camera. Karen wasn't done digging herself deeper. Oh no, she was just getting started with her confessions. "You want to know the truth?" she said, waving that chainsaw around. "I've been planning this for weeks. I researched exactly when I could legally do it, and 6 a.m. is perfectly legal for construction noise. I made sure to cut it down in a way that would cause maximum damage to your precious flower garden, too. Wait, what? She just admitted to premeditated destruction of property. Not only did she confess to cutting down my tree, but she confessed to planning it deliberately to cause me as much pain as possible. And if you try to plant another tree in that spot, I'll cut that one down too. This is war now, and I don't lose wars. Threats. She was making threats against future property on camera. My lawyer cousin had told me that threats of future harm would make the penalties much worse, and here she was delivering them directly into my phone's microphone. Karen, you're admitting to planning this destruction in advance and threatening to commit more crimes in the future. You realize I'm recording this, right? I don't care who's recording. You can't prove anything. Except I could prove everything, because she had just confessed to all of it on camera. This woman was so angry and arrogant that she was convicting herself with her own words. They had just confessed to everything on camera, but when I told them about the consequences heading their way, that's when they finally started to understand they had made a huge mistake. Karen, the police are on their way here right now. I've already spoken to my lawyer, and you've just confessed on video to multiple crimes. You're about to face some very serious consequences. For the first time all morning, Karen's confident expression started to crack. What do you mean, police? I mean, I called 911 while you were cutting down my tree, and they've been listening to this whole conversation through my phone. Destruction of property, trespassing, disturbing a memorial site, making threats. That's just the beginning of your problems. I could see her brain starting to work, finally realizing what she had done. The chainsaw suddenly felt heavy in her hands, and she set it down on the ground like it was evidence she didn't want to be holding. Now, wait a minute, maybe we can work something out. I could plant you a new tree. We're neighbors, we should try to get along. Too little, too late, Karen. When you're cutting down someone's memorial tree at 6 a.m. and making fun of their dead grandmother, you don't get to suddenly play the "let's be friends" card when the police are coming. I offered to work things out for months, remember? You chose war instead of peace. Now you get to live with that choice. Seeing them panic was satisfying, but I was just getting started. My first official move was going to hit them where it really hurt. Right on cue, I heard the police sirens coming down our street. 2 patrol cars pulled up in front of our houses, and 4 officers got out to assess the situation. Karen suddenly looked very small and scared standing there in the pile of debris from my destroyed tree. The lead officer walked up to us and immediately started taking notes about the scene. Scattered tree branches, chainsaw on the ground, obvious property damage. It was pretty clear what had happened here. "Ma'am, we received a call about property destruction and trespassing," he said to me. "Can you tell me what happened here?" I showed him the video I had taken, starting from the beginning when Karen first started cutting. The officers watched the whole thing, including her confession and her threats about cutting down future trees. "And ma'am," he said to Karen, "is this an accurate representation of what happened here this morning?" Karen tried to backtrack, talking about property rights and nuisance trees, but the evidence was right there on video. She had already confessed to everything, and now she was trying to take it back. The officers separated us and took individual statements. They photographed the damage, measured the property lines, and documented everything professionally. This wasn't just a neighbor dispute anymore. This was an official police investigation. When the authorities saw my evidence and heard the whole story, their response was everything I hoped for, and it was about to get even better. Officer Martinez, the lead investigator, came back to me after speaking with Karen and examining all the evidence. "Ma'am, this is one of the clearest cases of property destruction I've seen in 20 years. Your video evidence is excellent, and the suspect has already confessed to multiple crimes." He explained that they would be filing charges for destruction of property, trespassing, and disturbing a memorial site. Because Karen had admitted to planning the destruction in advance, it would be treated as a felony instead of just a misdemeanor. The fact that this was a memorial tree makes it much more serious, Officer Martinez explained. Our state has specific laws protecting burial and memorial sites. She could face up to 3 years in prison and be required to pay full restitution for all damages. They arrested Karen right there in our front yards, putting handcuffs on her while she stood in the wreckage of my grandmother's tree. The other neighbors had come outside to watch, and they were all seeing their neighborhood bully finally face real consequences. But the officers weren't done. They told me to document every single thing that had been damaged and get estimates for replacement and cleanup costs. They also gave me information about victims' rights and how to make sure I got full compensation. The official response was amazing, but what happened when word got around the neighborhood was something I never expected, and it made my case even stronger. Within an hour of Karen being arrested, my doorbell started ringing. First, it was Mrs. Chown from across the street, then the Johnson family from next door, then practically everyone else on our block. Word travels fast in small neighborhoods, especially when someone finally stands up to the local bully. "We saw what happened," Mrs. Chin said. "That woman has been making everyone's life miserable since she moved here. We're so glad someone finally stood up to her." The Johnsons brought me a casserole and offered to help clean up the mess in my yard. Karen complained about our kids playing basketball in their own driveway, Mr. Johnson told me. She called the city 5 times about noise violations for kids being kids. But here's what really helped my case. All my neighbors started sharing their own stories about Karen's harassment and bullying. Mrs. Peterson had been keeping a journal of Karen's complaints and threatening phone calls. The Williams family had security camera footage of Karen trespassing in their yard to measure their fence. Everyone was eager to be witnesses in my case. They had all been victims of Karen's bullying, but they were too scared or too tired to fight back individually. Now that I had taken a stand, they all wanted to help make sure she faced consequences. When I heard what this neighbor had been doing to other people in our community, I realized I wasn't just fighting for myself, I was fighting for all of us, and that made me even more determined to see this through. The stories my neighbors told me were shocking. Karen had been terrorizing our entire block for 6 months, and everyone had just been suffering in silence, hoping she would eventually calm down or move away. She had called child services on the Martinez family, claiming their kids were being neglected because they played outside after school. She reported Mrs. Peterson's flower garden to the city, claiming it was attracting bees that were dangerous to the neighborhood. She even tried to get the Johnsons' dog taken away, claiming it barked too much, even though Buddy is the quietest golden retriever you've ever met. But the worst story came from elderly Mr. Thompson at the end of our street. Karen had been harassing him about his late wife's rose garden, claiming the roses were overgrown and needed to be removed. That garden was Mr. Thompson's way of remembering his wife of 50 years, and Karen was trying to force him to destroy it. Every single story followed the same pattern. Karen would find something that brought joy or comfort to a neighbor, then launch a campaign to destroy it using official complaints and harassment. She wasn't just difficult, she was systematically cruel. All of this evidence painted a picture of someone who enjoyed hurting other people, especially when their targets had emotional attachments to what she was trying to destroy. My memorial tree wasn't her first victim, just her biggest mistake. Learning about this pattern of bullying behavior gave me even more ammunition, but when my lawyers saw all the evidence we had compiled, they told me something that made me smile from ear to ear. Cousin Jake called me back after reviewing all the new evidence from my neighbors. "This isn't just a property dispute anymore," he told me. "With all these witness statements and the pattern of harassment, we can build a case for intentional infliction of emotional distress, stalking, and harassment." He explained that Karen's systematic targeting of memorial and sentimental items showed deliberate cruelty, not just property disputes. The fact that she had researched my tree specifically and planned its destruction for maximum emotional damage proved malicious intent. "The memorial tree destruction alone would get you significant damages," Jake said. "But with all this evidence of ongoing harassment targeting multiple neighbors, we're looking at punitive damages too." She could end up paying tens of thousands of dollars, not just replacement costs. Jake also told me that the criminal charges would likely result in Karen having to complete community service, anger management classes, and possibly even jail time. The combination of criminal and civil consequences meant she would face serious, life-changing penalties. But the best part was that Jake was confident we could get a restraining order that would legally prevent Karen from harassing any of the neighbors again. One legal action would protect our entire community. My lawyer was confident we had an airtight case, but when my neighbor found out about the legal action, their response showed me just how desperate they had become. Karen made bail the same day she was arrested, and by evening she was back in her house, probably realizing for the first time how much trouble she was actually in. That's when the desperate phone calls started. First, she called me directly, trying to sound all sweet and reasonable. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," she said. "Maybe we can work something out without involving lawyers and courts. I could pay for a new tree." When I told her it was too late for that, she tried a different approach. She started calling other neighbors, trying to convince them that I was the real problem. She told Mrs. Chun that I was stirring up trouble and asked her not to be a witness in my case. Then Karen tried to get ahead of the story by posting on our neighborhood Facebook page. She wrote this long post about property rights and standing up to bullying neighbors, basically trying to make herself look like the victim instead of the person who had just been arrested for destruction of property. But here's what Karen didn't understand. Everyone had seen her get arrested. Everyone knew what she had done, and everyone was tired of her bullying. Her desperate Facebook post just reminded people of all the problems she had caused. Their desperate attempt to save themselves only made things worse, because what they tried next was so ridiculous. It actually helped prove my case even more. Karen's next move was so stupid, it almost felt like she was trying to help my case. She went to the city planning office and filed a formal complaint claiming that I had given her permission to cut down the tree, but then changed my mind after she had already started. Think about that logic for a minute. She was claiming that I gave her permission to destroy my grandmother's memorial tree, then got mad at her for doing exactly what I supposedly asked her to do. Does that make sense to anyone? The city planning officer who took her complaint actually called me to verify her story. I played him the video of Karen confessing to cutting down my tree without permission and making threats about future destruction. The officer was laughing by the end of the recording. "Ma'am, this woman just filed a false report with the city," he told me. "That's another crime she can be charged with. Would you like me to add this to the police report?" Of course I did. Karen was so desperate to avoid consequences that she kept making her situation worse. Every lie she told, every false claim she made, just added more evidence to my case and more charges to her growing list of legal problems. Every move they made just proved how guilty they were, but the real turning point came when something happened that sealed their fate once and for all. The final nail in Karen's coffin came from an unexpected source: her own security cameras. During the investigation, the police asked both of us if we had any additional video footage of the incident. I didn't have security cameras, but Karen did. At first, Karen refused to provide her footage, claiming it was private property. But the police got a warrant, and what they found on Karen's cameras was absolutely perfect for my case. Her cameras had captured her setting up the chainsaw in her garage at 5:30 a.m., a full half hour before she started cutting. The footage showed her checking to make sure I wasn't awake, then carrying the chainsaw over to my tree and taking time to plan exactly how to cause the most damage. But the most damaging evidence was audio footage of Karen talking to herself while she worked. Her cameras had picked up her saying things like, "This will teach her to mess with me," and "I hope this breaks her heart like she deserves." Her own security system had recorded her confessing to deliberate, premeditated destruction of my memorial tree with the specific intent to cause me emotional pain. She had literally created a recording of herself committing the crime and explaining her malicious motivations. That was the moment I knew justice would be served, And when the official decision came down, it was everything I had hoped for and more. 3 weeks later, Karen stood in front of Judge Wilson for her criminal sentencing hearing. I was there with my cousin Jake and half the neighborhood, all of us waiting to see justice finally served. The judge had reviewed all the evidence: my video, Karen's confession, her security camera footage, and witness statements from 6 different neighbors. She had also read the victim impact statements, where I described what that memorial tree meant to me and how its destruction had affected my grieving process. "Ms. Karen Miller," Judge Wilson said, "you have pleaded guilty to destruction of property, trespassing, disturbing a memorial site, and filing false police reports. This court finds your actions to be deliberately cruel and calculated to cause maximum emotional harm to your victim." Karen was sentenced to 6 months in jail, suspended to probation as long as she completed 200 hours of community service, paid full restitution for all damages, and attended anger management classes. She was also ordered to have no contact with me or any other neighbors she had harassed. But the criminal case was just the beginning. Jake had also filed a civil lawsuit for emotional distress, harassment, and punitive damages. The civil case was settled out of court when Karen's lawyer realized how much evidence we had against her. Winning felt amazing, but when I learned about all the consequences they would face, I realized my decision to fight back smart instead of just getting angry had paid off in ways I never imagined. The total consequences Karen faced were more than I ever dreamed possible. In addition to her criminal penalties, the civil settlement required her to pay me $35,000 in damages. That money would more than cover replacing my tree and creating an even better memorial garden for my grandmother. But the consequences went beyond just money and legal penalties. Karen's employer found out about her arrest and conviction for harassment and property destruction. Apparently, working in customer service while having a criminal record for bullying behavior doesn't look good to employers. She lost her job within a week of her sentencing. The Homeowners Association also took action. With documented evidence of Karen harassing multiple neighbors and breaking community rules, they fined her $5,000 and put her house under special monitoring. Any future complaints against neighbors would result in additional fines and possible legal action from the HOA. Karen also had to register as someone with a restraining order against her, which showed up on background checks. This made it harder for her to rent apartments, get new jobs, or even volunteer in the community. Her bullying behavior had created consequences that would follow her for years. But perhaps the most satisfying consequence was seeing how the neighborhood changed. Karen's reign of terror was over. Kids could play in their yards without fear of complaints. Mr. Thompson could tend his wife's roses without harassment. Everyone felt safe and peaceful in their own homes again. The legal system had worked exactly the way it was supposed to work. Someone who hurt other people faced real consequences, and the victims got justice and protection. When they realized how serious the consequences were, their reaction was something I'll never forget, and it showed me they finally understood they couldn't bully people anymore. The first time I saw Karen after her sentencing was at the grocery store 2 weeks later. She was with her sister, probably helping her look for a new place to live, when she spotted me in the produce section. The change in her was dramatic. Gone was the arrogant, aggressive woman who had destroyed my tree with a smile on her face. This Karen looked smaller, defeated, like someone who had finally learned that actions have consequences. She tried to duck down behind the banana display when she saw me, but her sister made her come over and apologize. It was awkward and uncomfortable, but also necessary. "I'm sorry for what I did to your tree," Karen mumbled, not quite meeting my eyes. "I know it meant a lot to you, and I shouldn't have destroyed it." "Karen, you didn't just destroy a tree. You destroyed a memorial to my grandmother and traumatized an entire neighborhood. But I appreciate the apology." Her sister looked embarrassed and ashamed, probably hearing the full story for the first time. "We're moving her to a new city," she told me quietly. "She's getting counseling and trying to make better choices." Seeing them panic was satisfying, But the change in our neighborhood was something that benefited everyone who lived here. After Karen left our neighborhood, it was like someone had lifted a dark cloud that had been hanging over our entire street. The change was immediate and beautiful. Kids started playing outside again, without their parents worrying about noise complaints. Mrs. Peterson expanded her flower garden, adding the beehives she had always wanted. The Martinez family got a puppy, something they had been afraid to do while Karen was around. Our neighborhood block parties came back. We started a community garden in the empty lot at the end of the street. People felt comfortable decorating their yards and homes without fear that someone would complain or call the city about every little thing. Mr. Thompson invited everyone over to see his wife's rose garden, and we all learned about the different varieties she had planted and what they meant to their 50-year marriage. It was beautiful and healing for all of us. But the most amazing change was how neighbors started looking out for each other. We had all learned what happens when bullies go unchallenged, so we made a pact to support each other if anyone ever tried to terrorize our community again. The whole neighborhood felt different after this, but I still had to deal with the heartbreak of losing my grandmother's memorial tree, until I came up with an idea that was even better than what I had before. Looking at the empty space where my grandmother's oak tree used to stand, I realized I had an opportunity to create something even more meaningful than what had been destroyed. The settlement money from Karen gave me resources I never would have had otherwise. Instead of just planting one new tree, I decided to create an entire memorial garden that would honor not just my grandmother, but also serve as a peaceful place for the whole neighborhood. I wanted to turn Karen's act of destruction into something beautiful and healing. My plan included 3 oak trees planted in a triangle pattern, representing my grandmother, my mother, and me, 3 generations of strong women. Between the trees, I would plant her favorite flowers, roses, lavender, and sunflowers. I also planned to add a small bench where people could sit and remember their own loved ones. The center of the garden would have a small memorial stone with my grandmother's name and the words she always said to me, "Bloom where you are planted." It seemed perfect for a memorial garden where beautiful things would grow from the ashes of destruction. My plan was ambitious, but when the community heard what I wanted to do, the support I received was overwhelming and made the project even more special than I had imagined. When I shared my memorial garden plans with my neighbors, the response was incredible. Everyone wanted to help turn this tragedy into something beautiful for our entire community. Mr. Thompson, who knew everything about roses, offered to help design the flower arrangements and teach me how to care for the plants. The Johnson family volunteered their teenage sons to help with the heavy digging and planting. Mrs. Chen, who owned a landscaping business, donated professional design services and helped me choose the best plants for our climate. The local nursery heard about the project and offered to donate the 3 oak trees. The Memorial Stone Company gave me a discount when they learned the garden was being built to replace something that had been maliciously destroyed. But the most touching support came from other neighbors who wanted to add small memorial elements for their own lost loved ones. Mrs. Peterson asked if she could plant a section of forget-me-nots for her late husband. The Martinez family wanted to add a small bird bath in memory of their son who had died in military service. What started as my personal memorial garden was becoming a community, a healing space where everyone could remember the people they had loved and lost. With everyone's help, what we created wasn't just a memorial to my grandmother. It became something that honored the whole community, and when it was finished, even I was amazed at how beautiful it turned out. 6 months after Karen destroyed my single oak tree, our community memorial garden was completed, and it was more beautiful than anything I could have imagined on my own. The 3 oak trees had been planted with special soil mixed with my grandmother's ashes. Just like the original tree, they were already growing strong and healthy, their branches reaching toward the sky like my grandmother's spirit reaching toward heaven. The flower sections bloomed in waves throughout the growing season. Spring brought tulips and daffodils. Summer brought roses and sunflowers. Fall brought chrysanthemums and asters. There was always something beautiful blooming, no matter what time of year people visited. The memorial bench became a gathering place where neighbors would sit and chat in the evenings. Children would play hide and seek among the flowers. Elderly neighbors would come to rest and remember their own loved ones. At the center of it all, my grandmother's memorial stone caught the morning sunlight, and her words, "Bloom where you are planted," seemed to bless everything that grew around it. The garden had become a symbol of how something beautiful and meaningful can grow from the worst situations. The memorial was more beautiful than I ever dreamed, but the best part was seeing my former neighbor's reaction every time they had to walk past this daily reminder of what happens when you mess with the wrong person. For the 2 months before Karen moved away, she had to walk past my grandmother's memorial garden every time she left her house. The garden was right there in my front yard, impossible to ignore, blooming with life and beauty. I would see her sometimes, hurrying past with her head down, clearly uncomfortable with the daily reminder of what her cruelty had created. Where she had tried to destroy something meaningful, something even more meaningful had grown in its place. The irony wasn't lost on any of us neighbors. Karen had thought she was winning when she cut down my tree. She had thought she was teaching me a lesson about not standing up to her demands. Instead, her act of destruction had led to the creation of something beautiful that would honor my grandmother forever. Every morning when I sat in the garden with my coffee, I would think about how my grandmother always said that good things come from bad situations if you handle them the right way. She was right, as usual. The garden also served as a reminder to our entire neighborhood about what happens when communities come together to support each other against bullies. It was proof that love and cooperation are always stronger than hate and destruction. Seeing their discomfort every day is satisfying, but the real victory is how this experience changed me as a person and taught me something important about standing up for what's right. Before this whole experience with Karen, I was the kind of person who avoided conflict at all costs. I would rather give in to unreasonable demands than face confrontation. I thought being peaceful meant letting people walk all over me. But defending my grandmother's memorial tree taught me the difference between keeping peace and being a doormat. Sometimes fighting for what's right is the most peaceful thing you can do because it stops bullies from hurting other people. I learned that having evidence and staying calm is much more powerful than getting angry and emotional. When you document everything and know your rights, you have real power instead of just hurt feelings. This experience also taught me that most bullies are actually cowards who have never faced real consequences for their actions. Karen seemed so powerful and intimidating when she was making demands and threats. But the moment she faced legal consequences, she crumbled like a house of cards. Most importantly, I learned that standing up for yourself doesn't just help you, it helps everyone around you. When I fought back against Karen's bullying, it freed my entire neighborhood from her harassment. I'm not the same person I was before this happened. I'm stronger, more confident, and much less willing to let people treat me badly just to avoid conflict. This experience taught me so much about standing up for myself. And if you're dealing with a difficult neighbor or anyone who's trying to push you around, there are some important lessons I learned that could help you too. The most important lesson I learned is that documentation is everything. If I hadn't filmed Karen destroying my tree and confessing to her crimes, it would have been my word against hers. But with video evidence, there was no arguing about what really happened. Always know your rights before you find yourself in a conflict situation. I was lucky to have a lawyer in the family, but there are resources available to everyone. Local legal aid societies, online research, and even police departments can help you understand what protection the law offers. Don't try to handle serious harassment or property destruction on your own. Get officials involved early, whether that's police, city code enforcement, or homeowners associations. These situations usually get worse before they get better. So don't wait until something terrible happens. Build relationships with your neighbors before you need them. If I hadn't been a good neighbor to everyone else on our block, they might not have been willing to support me when I needed witnesses and evidence about Karen's pattern of behavior. Stay calm and strategic instead of reacting emotionally. I wanted to run outside and scream at Karen when I saw her cutting down my tree. But staying calm and gathering evidence first made all the difference in getting justice. These lessons can work in any situation where someone is trying to take advantage of you. But there are some specific steps I recommend if you're facing something similar. If you're dealing with a difficult neighbor or someone who's harassing you, here's exactly what you should do, based on what worked for me and what I learned from my lawyer. First, start documenting everything immediately. Keep a written log of every incident with dates, times, and details. Take photos or videos whenever possible. Save any text messages, emails, or written notes. This evidence will be crucial if you need to take legal action. Second, research your local laws and resources. Find out what your city or county considers harassment, property violations, or disturbing the peace. Learn what agencies handle different types of complaints and how to file reports properly. Third, try to resolve things peacefully first, but do it in writing. Send a polite but firm letter explaining the problem and asking for specific changes. This shows that you tried to be reasonable before taking stronger action. Fourth, involve officials early if the harassment continues. Don't wait for the situation to explode. File complaints with police, code enforcement, or your homeowners association as soon as you have evidence of rule breaking or illegal behavior. Finally, get support from other neighbors if they've had similar problems. Bullies often target multiple people, and you're more likely to get results if you work together. Following these steps can make all the difference, but there are also some common mistakes people make that can hurt their case. Mistakes I almost made myself. The biggest mistake I almost made was reacting emotionally instead of strategically. When I first saw Karen cutting down my tree, I wanted to run outside in my pajamas and tackle her. That would have made me look like the crazy one and weaken my case. Never confront someone who's harassing you without witnesses or evidence. If I had gone outside and yelled at Karen without filming her first, it would have been my word against hers about what really happened. Don't ignore the problem, hoping it will go away. I spent months trying to be reasonable with Karen while she escalated her harassment. I should have started documenting and involving officials much sooner. Avoid making threats or saying things you'll regret when you're angry. Anything you say or do can be used against you later. So stay calm and professional even when the other person is being awful. Don't try to handle serious harassment without help. I was lucky to have a lawyer in my family, but there are resources available even if you can't afford private legal help. Legal aid societies, victim advocacy groups, and even police departments can provide guidance. Finally, don't give up too early. Bullies count on their victims getting tired and giving up. Be prepared for a long process, but know that persistence usually pays off when you have evidence and the law on your side. If I had made these mistakes, the whole story could have ended very differently. My neighbor might have gotten away with it, and I'd still be dealing with a bully who thought they could walk all over anyone. Imagine if I had handled this situation differently. What if I had run outside in my pajamas that morning and gotten into a screaming match with Karen? What if I hadn't thought to film her confession? What if I had given up when she started threatening me? Karen would probably still be living next door, still harassing everyone in the neighborhood. She would have learned that she could destroy people's most precious possessions and get away with it. My grandmother's memorial would be gone forever, with no justice and no consequences for the person who destroyed it. I would still be the neighborhood victim, afraid to stand up for myself, wondering what Karen might destroy next. The other neighbors would still be suffering in silence, afraid to challenge someone who seemed untouchable. The bullying would have escalated. When bullies succeed, they always push further and hurt more people. Karen might have moved on to targeting other memorial sites, children's play equipment, or anything else that brought joy to our community. Worst of all, I would have learned that being peaceful and reasonable doesn't protect you from cruel people. I would have become bitter and angry, believing that bad people always win and good people always suffer. Thank goodness that's not how this story ended, because now, several months later, the situation with my former neighbor has evolved in ways that still make me smile. Today, almost a year after Karen destroyed my grandmother's tree, life in our neighborhood is peaceful and beautiful. Karen moved away 6 months ago, and we heard through the grapevine that she's living with her sister in another state. The memorial garden is thriving. The 3 oak trees have grown strong and tall, and the flowers bloom in beautiful cycles throughout the year. Neighbors still stop by to sit on the bench and enjoy the peaceful space we created together. Our community is stronger now. We learned that we have power when we work together and support each other. No one has tried to bully or harass any of us since Karen left, partly because word gets around about what happens when you mess with our neighborhood. I still get Christmas cards from some of the neighbors who helped with the garden project. Mr. Thompson brings me roses from his wife's garden every summer. The Martinez family invites me to their cookouts. We've become a real community instead of just people who happen to live near each other. The legal case is completely closed. Karen fulfilled all her community service requirements and paid every penny of the settlement. The restraining order is still in effect, which means she legally cannot contact me or return to our neighborhood. The situation now is exactly what it should be: respectful boundaries and no more bullying. And that's why I want to leave you with one final message that I hope will inspire you in your own life. Here's what I want you to understand. You have more power than you think you do. When someone is trying to bully you, harass you, or destroy something meaningful to you, you're not helpless. You have rights, you have options, and you have the ability to fight back effectively. The law is designed to protect people like you and me from people like Karen. Police, courts, and city officials deal with harassment and property destruction every day. When you have evidence and you follow the proper procedures, the system usually works. You deserve to feel safe and peaceful in your own home. You deserve to have your property respected. You deserve to honor your loved ones without fear that someone will destroy what's meaningful to you. These aren't privileges, they're rights. Standing up for yourself doesn't make you mean or aggressive. It makes you strong and self-respecting. When you protect yourself from bullies, you're also protecting other people who might be their future victims. Your neighbors, your community, and even your family are watching how you handle difficult situations. When you show strength and courage, you inspire other people to stand up for themselves too. Remember that bullies are counting on you to be too scared, too tired, or too confused to fight back. When you prove them wrong, you take away their power forever. You have more power than you think you do, and if you're facing any situation where someone is trying to push you around, I want you to remember something important. Remember that you deserve to be treated with respect, and you have the power to make that happen. You don't have to accept harassment, property damage, or cruelty from anyone, no matter how intimidating they seem. Document everything, know your rights, get support from your community, and never give up on getting justice. The system isn't perfect, but it usually works when you approach it strategically with good evidence. Your situation might seem hopeless right now, but I felt the same way when I was watching Karen destroy my grandmother's memorial tree. I thought she was too powerful, too aggressive, and too determined for me to stop. I was wrong, and if you're feeling overwhelmed by a bully in your life, you might be wrong too. You have strength you haven't discovered yet. You have legal rights you might not know about. You have neighbors and community members who would support you if they knew what was happening. You have the ability to turn a terrible situation into a victory for yourself and others. Don't let anyone convince you that you have to accept being treated badly. Don't let anyone destroy what's meaningful to you without consequences. Don't let anyone make you feel powerless in your own life. And if my story has inspired you, or if you have your own story about standing up to a difficult neighbor, I want to hear from you. I want to hear your stories in the comments below. Have you dealt with a difficult neighbor? Did you stand up to a bully? Are you currently facing harassment and need encouragement? Share your experience with our community. We're all here to support each other. If this story helped you feel more empowered to handle your own difficult situations, Please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about standing up for yourself and creating positive change in your community. And if you know someone who's dealing with harassment or bullying, please share this video with them. Sometimes we just need to see that other people have faced similar challenges and won their battles to believe we can win our own. My grandmother's memorial garden is more beautiful today than the single tree that Karen destroyed could ever have been. What started as an act of cruelty became the foundation for something wonderful that brings joy to our entire neighborhood. Sometimes the worst situations can lead to the most empowering outcomes. You just have to be willing to fight smart for what's right. That memorial garden blooms every year now, reminding me that good things can grow from bad situations when you handle them with courage, wisdom, and the support of people who care about justice. Remember, you're stronger than you know, you have more support than you realize, and you deserve to be treated with respect. Now go out there and bloom where you're planted, just like my grandmother always said. Sometimes the worst situations can lead to the most empowering outcomes. You just have to be willing to fight smart for what's right.